The characters in Game of Thrones and in the books have some of the best backstories I've ever seen or read in any series. Here's my very subjective list of the top 7 character backstories. If you've seen enough of my videos, you'll probably see a lot of these coming. Number 7 is the Hound. When Sandor Clegane, also known as the Hound, was 7, his older brother Rhaegar Clegane, also known as the Mountain, caught him playing with one of his toys that he didn't even care about. In his rage, he pressed his little brother's face against a fire, severely burning him to the point of his bone being exposed. To this day, Sandor is still deathly afraid of fire. We see a few instances in the show where his fear of fire really gets in his way of surviving, like in the Battle of Blackwater, where wildfire was used against Stannis, which leads to him abandoning the battlefield. We also see his fear of fire come into play during his trial by combat and when Arya tried to burn away any infection from a wound. To make things worse, their father tried to hide the truth of what occurred, telling people that Sandor's bedding caught fire. It's also believed that Gregor killed their sister and father. As a teen, Gregor was knighted by Rhaegar Targaryen, which made Sandor despise the idea of knighthood. Sandor would never take a knight's vows because of this. After his father died, the family keep went to Rhaegar Clegane. The moment this happened, Sandor left their home to serve the Lannisters. He would get the nickname the Hound because of his unquestioning obedience and because of the dogs on his family sigil. The thing that Sandor wants more than anything is to kill his older brother. My number 6 is Varys, also known as the Spider. Varys was born an orphan slave in Lys, which led a lot of fans theorizing that he's possibly a secret Targaryen or Blackfyre. I have a feeling George Martin will keep that a mystery even at the end of the series, so I think it's best to just look at him as your average orphan. He was an apprentice to a group of actors in Essos, similar to what Arya is doing in the books. When his acting group made their way to Myr, a man bought Varys from his master and performed a fire magic ritual on him. Varys was given a potion to make him unable to move or speak, but still had all his other senses. His genitals were cut and thrown into a fire. This man could be a follower of the Lord of Light or just a sorcerer, but his interest in Varys is also seen as a hint of him having Targaryen blood. Varys says he heard a voice in the fire, but what it said is left a mystery. He's hated magic ever since. The man who bought him didn't have any more use from the eunuch, and he was left on his own from then on. He resorted to begging, selling his body, and thieving until he became known as the Prince of Thieves in Myr. Another thief ratted him out, so he ran off to Pentos. In Pentos, he would get attacked for being a eunuch until he met with Illyrio Mopatas, who was just a poor sellsword at the time. Together, they started a business. Varys would spy and steal from thieves, while Illyrio would return the stolen goods for a price back to the owners. As they grew rich, Varys learned the value of spying and gathering information. He began paying orphans to do his dirty work for him and eventually had a network of spies. He became so well known that the paranoid Mad King brought him over to Westeros and enlisted him as his own master of whisperers. Number 5 is Sir Barristan Selmy. My Sir Barristan the Badass video already covers his entire life, so I'll just make this one brief, even though I love this character. He was crazy enough to enter a tourney at 10 years old and jousted against Prince Duncan Targaryen, where he obviously lost but got the nickname Barristan the Bold by the prince. At 16, he defeated the same prince and was knighted by the king himself. He would grow to be an amazing tourney fighter. He was just as good on the battlefield. He ended the 5th Blackfyre Rebellion on his own when he fought and killed Meleys the Monstrous in single combat. When the Mad King was kidnapped in Duskendale, Barristan on his own climbed up the castle walls and fought his way to the king to rescue him. Even though he fought against Robert Baratheon's cause during the rebellion, Robert named him commander of the Kingsguard out of respect to this honorable knight. Number 4 is Oberyn Martell. While his older brother Doran Martell was being a responsible lord, Oberyn was a wild free spirit. He was found in bed with Lord Edgar Yernwood's mistress when he was 16. This caused a duel between the two, but since they're both highborn, the duel was only until first blood. They both walked away with minor injuries, but Edgar Yernwood's wounds got infected and it killed him. People believed Oberyn was using poison on his weapon and began calling him the Red Viper. Responsible Durin knew he had to do something. Since the Yernwoods are a powerful house in Dorne, he temporarily exiled Oberyn. Oberyn went to study at the Citadel, where he forged 6 lengths of a maester's chain before he grew bored and just left. After all that reading and studying, he joined the Second Sons as a sellsword in Essos. He eventually started his own sellsword company. He was also making a lot of babies. Every single one of them was a bastard and a girl. But Oberyn doesn't believe in treating his bastards any differently than others. During his travels in Essos, he would learn a lot about poisons and possibly magic. Qyburn believes that he uses magic to slow down the effects of the poison he used against the mountain in order to prolong his suffering and eventual death. He may come off as a fool because of how wild he is, but he's in fact the opposite. Oberyn loved his older sister Elia and were inseparable as young children. When he learns that Tywin Lannister was responsible for her death and his niece and nephews, Together with his patient brother Doran, they have been planning revenge for a long time. They planned to marry Doran's daughter to Viserys Targaryen before he was killed by Khal Drogo. Number 3 is probably my favorite character in the books, Euron Greyjoy. We haven't seen a lot of him in the show, and considering the few amount of episodes left, they won't be able to do his character justice. Euron, also known as Crow's Eye, is Balon Greyjoy's younger brother and Theon's uncle. He might just be the cruelest character in the series so far, even crueler than the Mountain or Ramsay. When he was younger, he would rape and kill some of his own Greyjoy brothers. His older brother Balon decided to exile him after he raped and possibly seduced his other brother Victarion's salt wife. His family hates him and fears him, but he easily finds crew members for his ship because he's fine with letting them have the majority of what they pillage. On his ship the Silence, he says he's traveled the world, even surviving the ruins of Valyria. This is where he says he found a dragon horn, said to be able to control dragons, and even a dragon egg, which he threw away. It's hard to believe anything he says, however, since he's cut off the entire crew's tongues. Euron is a manipulative person who loves to play mind games on people, and his brother says that all of his gifts are poison. For some mysterious reason, he covers one eye with an eye patch. One of his eyes are blue, and it said the other is a black shining eye with malice. Unlike Oberyn Martell, Euron doesn't care for any of his bastard children. It seems like he has some connection with magic, and in the current story has kidnapped warlocks and started drinking their shade of the evening, turning his lips blue and allowing him to possibly see visions of the future. Number 2 is Rhaegar Targaryen. I tried to keep this list relevant to the current story, but Rhaegar had to be on this. And I guess he's still very much relevant considering he was Daenerys' older brother and Jon Snow's father. And he played a vital role in forming the beginning of this series. Rhaegar was 25 years older than the two, and was pretty much the typical perfect prince, who was good at everything he did and loved by everyone. He was a pretty quiet guy who was into reading and obsessed with a specific prophecy. He was a skilled fighter, but loved playing his harp more than sword fighting. He never bothered with learning how to fight until he believed he was a prince that was promised. He read a scroll that convinced him that he needed to be a warrior. Rhaegar was born just outside the tragedy of Summerhall, where a Targaryen king was trying to hatch dragon eggs with wildfire, but burned the entire castle down instead. It's implied that he was a true dragon born from that tragedy. Eventually he married Elia Martell, the sister of Oberyn, and had 2 children with her, Rhaenys and Aegon. Elia Martell never had the best health and almost died giving birth to Aegon. Having another child would have killed her. Rhaegar then believed it was his son who was a prince that was promised. Rhaegar was naming his children after Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives. When his son Aegon was born, he said there must be one more, and the dragon has 3 heads. This is most likely referring to him needing to have one more child to fulfill the prophecy. Aegon the Conqueror conquered Westeros with his 2 sister wives. They were the original 3-headed dragon. As crazy as his obsession with prophecy sounds, it's understandable since in this story, visions of the future with the use of magic is real. After winning the tourney at Harrenhal, Rhaegar declares Lyanna Stark, who was attending the tourney, the Queen of Love and Beauty, a title that should have went to his wife. This was a clear sign of Rhaegar looking to find someone else to have that last child with. It was a year later that Lyanna disappeared with Rhaegar and everyone believed he kidnapped her. This causes Robert's rebellion, where Rhaegar would eventually die by Robert's warhammer. But not before getting Lyanna Stark pregnant and possibly fulfilling the prophecy. Number 1 is probably kind of obvious. The Three-Eyed Raven, also known as Bloodraven, also known as Brynden Rivers. I'll also try to keep this one as brief as I can since I have a detailed video devoted just to him. He's around 125 years old in the books and dead on the show. He was one of many bastard children to the Targaryen king Aegon the Unworthy. He owned the Valyrian steel sword Darksister, but was way more skilled with a bow. Lord Bloodraven led a group of archers called Raven's Teeth, and was able to shoot down Daemon Blackfyre and his twin sons from far, ending the first Blackfyre rebellion. His half-brother and rival Bittersteel continued to fight and charged at Bloodraven. During their famous fight, Bittersteel was able to take one of Bloodraven's eyes. Backup arrived and Bittersteel had to escape to the Free Cities with Daemon Blackfyre's 5 other sons. Instead of wearing an eye patch, he left his wound uncovered. Bittersteel, being alive, and with all the Blackfyre children, worried Bloodraven and made him a cautious man. At any time they could start another war, and they did, causing 5 rebellions in total. He was someone that people feared, not only because of the way he looked, being pale with a hole in his face, but he had spies everywhere like Varys does, and people believed he did magic. Bloodraven would serve 2 kings as the Hand and Master of Whisperers. He was sent to the Wall to join the Night's Watch after he committed a crime while Hand of the King. His archer team, Raven's Teeth, joined him, as well as Maester Aemon Targaryen. After 6 years in the Night's Watch, Bloodraven became Lord Commander, 13 years later, he would disappear beyond the wall. Everyone believed him to be dead, and there's no mention of his Valyrian steel sword dark sister. We know that he never died. He's been living with the children in the forest beyond the wall for 50 years. It's not stated if he was a Greenseer before his disappearance, but the children in the forest call him the last Greenseer. He most likely spent the last 50 years using his green sight to see through the eyes of weirwood trees and see history and current events. He's also been communicating with people through magic in their dreams. If you guys think characters with better backstories were left out of my list, I would love to hear who you would have included. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back with more very soon since Season 7 is right about to air.